All right, third episode. Here we go. I was just listening over to the first little bit of the podcast that I just filmed, episode 2, and I realized that I get really close to the mic, and that it like isn't the vibe. So I'm gonna try my best to stay a good distance away. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get started with episode 3, where we are going to talk about how theism, the belief in God, has answers to life's biggest questions. I'm so excited to film this short little episode for you guys because, I mean, like I said in episode 1, the whole heart behind this podcast is to talk about why I believe there is a God and he wants a personal relationship with you and how that worldview has transformed my life. Like, I don't know where I would be if I didn't believe in God and if I didn't have a relationship with him and believe that he wants me here, because that changes the game. And so this episode is sort of a reflection of that. So let's just get into it. I think that most people at some point in their lives ask themselves these 3 questions. Number 1, how did I get here? Number 2, why am I here? And number 3, where am I going after I die? Maybe you don't ask them in that order or exactly in those terms, but I think that either consciously or subconsciously, we all ask ourselves those 3 questions at some point in our lives. Maybe some of us are more plagued and bothered by them than others, and I think you owe it to yourself to know the answer. I think you owe it to yourself to find out the answer to those 3 essential truths in your life. And whether you know it or not, what you believe to be the answers to those 3 questions, it just profoundly shapes your everyday actions. So if you want to, you can just sort of silently answer to yourself what you think the answer to those 3 questions are right now, just like where you're at currently in your life. What would you answer? What would your answer be? It might be interesting to sort of take a little quick mental inventory. So in the 2 previous episodes, I sort of defended my worldview, which is theism. I gave reasons and evidence, if you will, suggesting why believing in God is logical and makes the best sense of reality. And, in this episode, I'm not going to do really too much defending. We're just going to sort of assume, for the sake of conversation, that theism is true. So just for the sake of conversation, this isn't me trying to shove theism down your throat. We're just going to sort of assume. So the majority of this podcast, like the whole thing, like reasons we believe, the heart of it is apologetics, which is defending with reason and evidence the belief in God. But sometimes we will put a pause on the defending and just have a more casual conversation. And we're just going to keep it simple because I believe that these are profound and powerful truths, but they are simple. And in my opinion, that makes them even better. So, assuming theism is true, let's go through those 3 questions together. Number 1, how did I get here? Now, there are a lot of different religions that have to do with the existence of God. Pretty much all of them. There are thousands of religions, major and minor. And each one has a different narrative as to how humans were created. And we're not going to get into the specifics of any of those narratives today. But the bottom line of theism in general is this, that God created you, and he put you here on purpose. God wanted you, so he created you. And some theists believe that that was by evolution, and some believe by a direct creation account. But either way, you are the product of God's handiwork and desire. This means that even if you weren't planned on human terms, even if your parents weren't trying to have a child when they had you, God planned you all along. Your name was written in the book of life all along. This leads us into the next question, which is, why am I here? In other words, what is the purpose of my life, if there is any purpose? Well, if God wanted you here and he put you here, I think that automatically gives your life value. If the God who made the cosmos looked at his creation and said, yeah, I want one of this person, I'm going to make them, I think that gives you actually tremendous value. Some people say God looked at the earth and he thought it needed one of you. That's sort of the heart of the message here. And so depending on what religion you ask, there will be different answers to why you're here. You might get an answer like to honor God with your life, to love God, others, and yourself, to enjoy the life he gave you. And I think that there's truth to all of those ideas and claims. But what I think is that it all boils down to this. You're here to know God and to live for Him. Okay, whoa. The idea of living for God is in direct opposition to what culture says. Living for God is something that a lot of people look at. If you are somebody who lives for God, if you're super devout in your faith for God, some people might look at you and they're taken aback by it. They think it's strange. And I've been met with this reaction a lot, especially in high school. And I completely understand if you're somebody in high school that looked at me and thought, I genuinely don't understand why this girl is living this way. Like, I don't understand it. Or maybe you thought it was weird or cringy. I actually understand, because if you don't personally know God, and, if you don't know Him and you don't know what it's like to live for Him, it's going to seem strange on the outside. But so much transformation has taken place on the inside, that, maybe some people can't understand unless they live that for themselves. The mainstream trend in culture is to live for yourself. We are preached at constantly that living for yourself is how you find happiness and success. And I just think that's a straight up lie. Like, if I'm being totally transparent, I think that's a lie. I think that living for yourself will only lead to a very selfish attitude. And I am by no means saying that you shouldn't love yourself or take care of yourself. That's not what I'm saying. But I just want to touch on, because there's an opportunity here for me to do so, the idea that, living for yourself as number one, that is how you find happiness and success. I really think that leads to isolation and loneliness. But that's an idea for a different time. So anyways, bottom line, I think that knowing the God who made you gives you freedom and purpose. Think of it this way. If there is a God and He made you intentionally, every time someone belittles you, spreads rumors about you, every time, somebody makes you feel bad about yourself or judges you, or you are super hard on yourself, or you judge yourself and convince you that you aren't really worth anything, you can go back to the truth that God made you. And He calls you, and He loves you, and He calls you worthy. Other people's false opinions just sort of start to lose their weight. I'm somebody who very much cares about people's opinions of me. This is still something I struggle with, but, believing in God doesn't make your life perfect and sunshiny all the time, but I am able to, when somebody says something mean about me, I'm able to be like, all right, that really hurt, but I know who I am. Like, I know who I am. Like, I actually have a substantial place to go to. I'm not going back to other people's opinions. I'm not having to try to convince myself, have the right, flow of thoughts in my brain that, oh, I'm worthy, I'm enough, or affirm myself. I can go back to what God says about me. That's so much more profound in my opinion. And, He made you, He wants you, He gives you purpose, and it's as simple as that. Period. Okay, last question. Where am I going after I die? This one really depends on what religion you look at. Some might say heaven or hell, somewhere in between, somewhere of waiting until God comes back to judge the earth, or you're reborn into life again and the cycle continues. But in general, without getting into the specifics, theism says that this life that we are currently living here on earth, it isn't all that there is. After you die, your soul goes on, it continues to live, which I realize I'm super sensitive to when I'm getting into religious verbiage, and I feel like I just did. Your soul continues to live on. That's the bottom line of theism. And so I personally believe that when we die, we go on to live with God, to be in His presence, to be with our Creator who made us and wants us. He decided to put us here. He wanted to make you. He did, and He wants you back. And I believe that that's what happens after we die. This is a belief that gives tremendous hope to my day-to-day life. It helps me to look at the world when it's in utter chaos. Sometimes makes me lose all hope in humanity, but I'm able to sort of, have peace again, remembering that, hey, this isn't all there is. Like, it's getting pretty bad down here, but it's going to get better. And, like, one day I'm going to be with my Creator, and I'm going to be looking at, my life and say, that was pretty bad, but we got through it. Now I'm here. So it gives me peace, and it lets me relax a little bit and not take the small stuff too seriously. I really do realize that the idea of an afterlife is just too far-fetched for some people. And it's not scientific, it's not testable, so why would you believe in it? And I know I said I wasn't going to do any defending, or not much, but I am going to just stay on this topic. So if you're somebody who believes we can't know what happens after we die, my question to you is this: Why are you convinced that you can't know what happens? How did you come to that conclusion? And if you're anything like me, you like to have evidence and reasons behind what you believe. So I can 1000% respect your hesitation in that regard. And some people might reject any sort of afterlife, because science can't confirm it. And so now I'm going to turn back to apologist Greg Koukl. Guys, what can I say? Love Mr. Koukl. He has a great response to this. So I'm going to go ahead and just read a little bit of an article that's posted on Stand to Reason's website. You can read the whole thing if you want. I'll link it below. So he says, maybe that he's convinced, somebody who doesn't believe in an afterlife because you can't know anything about it. It may be that he's convinced we can't know anything unless science confirms it. There are a number of problems with this view. First, it's self-refuting, since the statement itself, we can't know anything unless science confirms it, is a statement held true by those who believe it, yet it cannot be confirmed by science. The view commits suicide, to use language in his book Tactics, since it cannot fulfill its own demand for legitimacy. So the claim there, this is me right now on the back end, the claim there that we can't know anything unless science confirms it, you can't confirm that claim by science. All right, let's move on to what he says next. Second, there are a host of things we must know to be true by other means than science in order for science to get going in the first place. That includes the truth of basic reliability of our senses, the truth of reason and logic, and the truth of inference, the truth of cause and effect, the truth of uniformity of causes in a natural world, etc. And then, of course, there's things like near-death experiences to go off of, where people have clinically died for an amount of time or they've come close to dying, and they experience what they believe to be an out-of-body experience, spending time in the afterlife, maybe even encountering God, and then coming back to consciousness. And, while these are just personal experiences, and so they might tend to lose their weight a little bit in that regard, there's actually been a lot of serious peer-reviewed work done on near-death experiences, NDEs, and if you're interested in learning more about this, so there's a documentary, if you have Amazon Prime, it's called The Case for Heaven. It was really good. So it talks about how, people have had legitimate near-death experiences, and I don't think that we can just dismiss them. I really don't. I think that you definitely can't prove that there's absolutely 100% not an afterlife. There is always a chance that there is an afterlife. And based off of all of the other reasons why I believe that God is true, I think that an afterlife can fit in pretty logically somewhere in there. So that's my take on life's 3 biggest questions and how theism answers them. Again, depending on what theistic religion you look at, you will get very specific answers for each of those questions, whether that be Islam, Mormonism, what have you will get specific answers, but later down the road, we will get more specific because, I am Christian and I believe there's a ton of evidence supporting the Christian worldview. But for now, we're just going to focus on the big picture, which is that it's logical to believe in God. So that's all for now. I'm super excited to continue making these episodes and get better at my camera work and my editing skills, which is totally foreign to me, and my backgrounds and not staying too close to the mic. If you guys have any suggestions, let me know. If you know me personally and you've listened to any of these episodes, you still might think that, just my motivation to do this or my belief in God is still a little bit odd. And, why do I have such an interest for talking about God? Like, why? Some girl once said that, I need to have more to my life than just God. Like, my hobbies are God. Everything in my life is God. Like, all there is to me is my faith. And that was super offensive to me for some reason. But then I was like, actually, yeah, this is my life. And I want to make this my life. And I want to search for the truth. And I want to spread the truth because the truth is powerful. And the truth sets you free. So, I've come to realize that having a firm foundation for my beliefs is life-changing. It gives purpose to everything that I do. So I just wanted to open this up to you guys, and if you have any questions about either Christianity in specific or, any other religion, I'll try to do some research for you, or what I've said in these episodes so far, or if you just have a question in general that you want me to address or touch on, or objections or refutations to anything I've said, I'd love to dive into your recommendations. Leave a comment. You can DM me on our public Instagram account, which is Reasons We Believe, same logo as you see in this podcast. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening to Reasons We Believe, and I will see you next time.